In 1993, when my friends and I were all arguing about which version of Street Fighter II was better, the Mega Drive or Super Nintendo, another fighting game franchise made its debut. Samurai Shodown was one of the many new fighters hoping to cash in on Street Fighter's popularity, but it was different. Set in 18th century Japan, it features weapon-wielding samurai, and its gameplay has a much bigger focus on strategy and patience. Sadly, both the Mega Drive and SNES ports, while decent for what they were, didn't come close to providing the same visceral impact of the arcade game. For this reason, I never got into SamSho back then. I wouldn't properly sit up and pay attention until a few years later, when I saw Samurai Shodown 3 for the first time at a local arcade. While SamSho 3 is often considered to be one of the weaker titles of the original NeoGeo games, its visual style was hard to ignore back in '95. It immediately captured my attention with its dark, brooding atmosphere and big, chunky pixel art. I ended up getting a somewhat legal copy of 3 for my Saturn, which I played a little. Unfortunately, X-Men vs Street Fighter came out shortly after, and everything else in my life ceased to exist after that. Ever since then though, I've been meaning to find my way back to the series, particularly as my love for 2D sprite-based fighters has only grown over the years. So when the Samurai Shodown NeoGeo collection was announced back in 2019, it immediately caught my attention. This collection contains the 6 games originally released for the NeoGeo, as well as one which, until now, was thought to be an urban legend. Also, at the time of making this video, if you're on the PS4, you can download Samurai Shodown 6 from the PSN store if you pick up this collection. It would have been nice if it was included on the disc, but it's better than nothing. The SamSho NeoGeo collection was put together by Digital Eclipse, who previously created the NeoGeo 40th Anniversary Collection, as well as the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection. They specialize in emulating old games, and although their previous efforts haven't always hit it out of the park in terms of content, the quality of their emulation has always been of a high standard. The games included in this collection are SamSho 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 Special, and 5 Perfect. The last 3 are all clearly variants of the same game, but there's a big enough difference between 5 and 5 Special to include both. 5 Perfect is a previously unreleased game, and while it doesn't make any massive changes over 5 Special, it's still interesting from a historical point of view. Each game is the original arcade ROM, running through Digital Eclipse's custom emulator called the Eclipse engine. They all seem to run well without any of the latency and jankiness that's common with emulation. I did notice a couple of very tiny visual glitches, such as the winning text in some games occasionally flickering. Having little to no experience with the OG MVS versions, I can't say if these are problems with the emulation or if they exist in the originals, but either way, they don't really get in the way. NeoGeo fanboys, feel free to drop some knowledge if you have the answers. Now you can swap between the English and Japanese versions of each game too. For the most part, this doesn't really change much. The one exception is SamSho 5, where there are story sequences before and after each match. They're all in Japanese, of course, but they also include some cool stage intros that are completely missing in the English version. This doesn't really flip the universe onto its head, but it's a nice little feature for those who want the original Japanese experience. If you're new to SamSho and are wondering if this is a good entry point into the series, then the answer is kind of. While it is one of the best ways to play these games outside of a real MVS or AES system in terms of authenticity and availability, not much has been done to help onboard new players. Actually, outside of the move lists and basic in-game tutorials, you're basically on your own to discover the intricacies of combat. These games might seem more accessible and intuitive than other fighters because they only have 4 buttons and also because the combat isn't as focused on combos, but just a few minutes with each game reveals that this is actually very untrue. The complexity and depth of each game makes it impossible to simply button mash your way to victory, and the computer AI will abuse your lack of skill pretty harshly even on the lower difficulties. Loads of moves require multiple button combinations, and some of them have very specific requirements. The fatalities in 5 Special, for example, can only be performed at match point, when your opponent's health bar is blue, and during a rage explosion. To make matters worse, the button layout isn't the same across every game. This isn't a knock against the games themselves, but it does mean that you can't necessarily transfer knowledge or muscle memory from one title to another. It also highlights the biggest problem with this collection from a newbie standpoint, and that is the complete lack of a training mode. My guess is that the reason for this is because they don't exist in the original ROMs, and adding them probably isn't as straightforward as it might seem. Nevertheless, something that went into more detail, even if it was just a text document explaining the various systems, would have been appreciated. I actually had to scour online wikis and guides to figure out what was possible and make a bunch of notes for each game. And while this did give me a warm hit of nostalgia, like I was back in high school searching game FAQs on dial-up, it's not the ideal way to get good. One of the biggest modern conveniences is the addition of online multiplayer, or it would be if finding a game was possible. In my experience, I never found a game with another person. Now, I don't know if this is a netcode issue or a lack of players issue or possibly both, but I've yet to play anyone online. This review was created sometime after launch too, so it's not like it's a launch week problem. It's a shame because there are some decent online options, such as being able to choose the amount of input delay and the fact that it uses rollback netcode. If things change in the future, I'll post an update in the description, but for now, if playing online is one of the main reasons you're looking to pick this up, then you might want to reconsider. The presentation is pretty impressive when compared to other similar collections. The menus are fast, easy to use, and full of big high-resolution graphics. Some of the UI design is a little hit and miss, but that's probably just the designer and me being fussy. The games themselves are presented just as they were in the arcade. You can of course remap your buttons, and like most collections there are a couple of visual settings to play with. So if you're a fan of scanlines or the faux monitor look, that's totally possible. There's also stacks of border designs to choose from if that's your thing. If you prefer a bare bones look, then you can simply play the game without all of these bells and whistles. You have a few screen display options too. You can display it in the standard ratio, there's a full screen option, which is my personal favourite, and there's a widescreen setting that stretches the image to fit the screen, which I honestly don't know why they included. The most interesting visual setting though is HD zoom. So the original games have a resolution of 320 by 224 pixels. The games in this collection are presented at over 2 times the horizontal pixels. I couldn't confirm the exact numbers, it may be as high as 4 times the original resolution, but either way it means the games are displayed with many more pixels. This results in an incredibly sharp looking image overall, and as an added bonus, the extra resolution allows the sprites to not drop any pixels when the game zooms out. This includes the backgrounds too, and you can see with HD zoom on what a big difference it makes over the original presentation. Outside of the games, there's a shitload of additional content here, including interviews, artwork, music, and behind the scenes stuff like character development sketches. There's this slick character viewer too that lets you see how the sprites have evolved over the years. You can also watch a handful of matches from tournaments to see how the game is played at a high level. My only complaint with these is that the videos can't be enlarged. I guess that's most likely due to them being a very low resolution. But even still, being able to view them at even a slightly larger size, even if it was a bit fuzzy, would be an improvement. Overall, the Samurai Shodown NeoGeo collection is an excellent and convenient way to play these classic titles. The huge amount of behind the scenes content also makes it a worthwhile purchase for fans who might already own these games on other systems. It would have been amazing if more could have been done to help new players get up to speed, but considering the complexity that likely involves, and that this is intended to be more of a historical archive, that is somewhat forgivable. The lack of online is definitely more of an issue though. It doesn't bother me personally because I doubt I'd last even 10 seconds against someone with skill. But it is an advertised feature that doesn't appear to work, and it's undoubtedly important for a lot of fans. Ultimately, this collection is for fans of the series, and also people looking to get educated on the original NeoGeo games. Granted that much of that education will be self-driven when talking about learning how to play them, but if you're after a deep history lesson and an accurate representation of these titles without spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on a real MVS or AES, then this is well worth the asking price.